Welcome on inside. Black and Gold, Steve Geller and Jeff Nowak bringing you the latest and greatest on the Saints after, I hate to call it an ugly win because any victory is purdy, but 14-11, it was a rough one to get through, Jeff, and there's the confetti flying down from the MetLife rafters. A victory is a victory, but in this case, even when the Saints win, Jeff, they still lose as well.
Yeah, that was ugly. The only thing that went right for the Giants in that game, I think, was whoever bought the plane that was flying overhead in the pregame that said, John Mara, please fix this dumpster fire, which I didn't see. I only heard about it. I think because it wasn't flying over the field. I think there's probably like protected airspace there.
So it was like a certain circumference it was around.
Yeah. And this is funny. So if you go back and you look at Jeff Ireland's tenure with the Dolphins, one thing that happened during that tenure, he was the GM, and that also happened to him, is Dolphins fans or a Dolphin fan, maybe one very affluent fan. Like, I don't know if this was a team effort or a one guy. Definitely wasn't Malik Neighbors. He made it clear he did not pay for the plane. That was his only comment about it. But someone did that to Jeff Ireland. There was a plane circling before one of their games that said "Fire Jeff Ireland" or something.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. So Jeff probably heard that story and thought back to his not so successful run as the Dolphins GM. Anyway, I don't know if a lot of people realize that because Jeff was the Dolphins GM and it did not go well. And he got a plane. He got the plane treatment too. So the Giants and Jeff have that in common.
Wonder how much that costs.
That's a good question. If anyone in the chat has ever
please share, right?
Has ever conscripted a advertising plane or whatever, a banner plane, let us know how much it cost you, because it's definitely not cheap. I'll tell you that much. There's actually been a blimp flying over New Orleans advertising the Netflix Christmas Day game, which is like, man, Netflix is really pulling out all the stops for this one. Hopefully they can at least stream it. But either way, let's get into this. This is going to be our standard post-game podcast. The Saints have kept their hopes alive. Hopes is a word that we'll use. It's not really a great hope. I think their chance at the playoffs going into the game was 1%, and it skyrocketed to a whole 2%. So there you have that. It's really going to, if they can beat Washington, then we can start having real conversations about it this week. If they can't, then it's basically over.
Right.
The Falcons are doing everything in their power to make sure the Saints can't just give up on this season. Every team in the NFC South, I looked this up this morning, every team in the NFC South has had at least a 4-game losing streak this year. The Saints have had 7. The Bucs and Falcons have both had 4, and the Falcons is ongoing at 4, so it could get longer. And the Panthers had 5. So, I don't think that happens very often where all 4 teams in a division had at least a 4-game losing streak. But
although, unfortunately, I think the Falcons, they get the Raiders, then the Giants, like back to back.
Yeah, no, the Falcons, their schedule lightens up significantly over the next few weeks. But that's neither here nor there. Like they were 6-3, they're now 6-7. They have one more win than the Saints this year. Think about that. Like as good as the first half of this season went for the Falcons, they are one game better than the Saints. Now they're going to win that tiebreaker either way because of their division record, but what a disgrace for Kirk Cousins going and back to face his former team in the Vikings and just getting taken apart. He's setting records for futility. I think he's like the first quarterback since 2005 and Brett Favre to have like 3 games where he threw 8 interceptions and no touchdown passes. It's a mess. But we're here to talk about the other disgraceful game that happened this week. And the Saints were a part of that. Going up against the Giants, we can start with the news. Derek Carr, obviously, whatever was going through his mind when he decided to try to do the high jump, basically, like a Superman jump. If he had done a high jump for him, he might have survived. He actually did Superman for him going over. And it's like, second down, man. Second down. You don't need it all. You got to give him some credit for kind of selling out for his team, but did seem a little foolish at the time. Sounds like he's dealing with a fractured hand. We'll find out more today, probably when Darren Rizzi talks. He's scheduled to talk about 1:15. It's his left hand, so it's his non-throwing hand. So it's not a definite that he misses time, but definitely not what you want to be dealing with at this point in the season. He's also sounds like he's in the concussion protocol, so that's something we've seen him do that. I mean, you look at the last 2 years for Derek Carr. What is this, the 5th time he's left a game early with an injury?
Because yes, since coming here, the dude has definitely been banged up a ton. And yeah, I wonder too, what made him take that much of a leap? We kind of joked about it coming on before this pod that, he got so high. Derek's got hops.
I didn't know he could jump that high. Yeah, I think he, because it was kind of like a full sprint to a jump, right? Like he wasn't just I'm going to hurdle this guy. I think the issue is he was trying to leap kind of to safety, but then as he got into midair, Kevin Austin's there, and he kind of he got thrown off course, and then he just had nothing but going straight down into his left wrist, and his head hit the ground. But yeah, and the thing is, it was 3rd and 1, but Derek going off the field is a problem there because now the Giants are they're gonna run it. There's no question. They don't have to question it at all. They're not putting Jake Haener in the game cold off the bench, no time to warm up or anything, and saying, all right, buddy, let's throw a pass. So they gave the ball to Kendre Miller. I was surprised they didn't give why Alvin wasn't in the game at that point. Shows you some confidence in Kendre Miller. But yeah, so Derek, so let's kind of go back. So Derek, he left the game early in week 3 against the Packers last year with the AC joint sprain. He left the game early in week 10 against the Vikings. I believe that was concussion protocol. He then left a game against the Lions early. I think that was the 3rd quarter, late in the 3rd quarter, maybe early 4th quarter. That was another concussion protocol issue. Week 5 of this year, left early in the 4th quarter with the oblique injury that actually cost him the next 3 games. This is the first time he's actually missed games with an injury. And now you're dealing with some sort of hand injury. I think the key is going to be, is it a hand injury or is it a wrist injury? Because if you just kind of have a broken finger or maybe a small fracture, you could probably brace it up and just be careful with it. If it's a wrist injury, anytime you go down, your natural, tendency is going to be to brace yourself. And you can definitely mess up a wrist injury a lot worse if you're not careful. So that's what
it looked like a wrist, but yeah, I'm no doctor, obviously.
Right. If you see the impact, it's not going to be your hand. It didn't get stepped on or anything. So I think that's going to be the question. If it's hand, I think there's a chance he plays. If it's anything below the hand to this point with this wrist joint, I think you're going to have a hard time. Either way, I bet you Derek's going to want to play. He's going to
take a snap.
Well, that's the other question is, can you receive the snap without it being an issue? Right. So that's going to be a question you have to answer throughout the week. And then the next question beyond that, which is something I don't really want to get into a ton today, but it's something that we can talk about if it's a question, is do you go with Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler? My inclination would be Jake Haener, just because, I think he's done all the work, deserves a shot to at least, get some run, right? You gave Spencer his 3 starts. Wouldn't say he did anything that makes you desperate to go back to him this year. And so, I think it would be, I don't want to say fair because fair doesn't really matter, but I think it would be reasonable to say, hey, let's see what Jake has, so that you go into the offseason with an idea on both guys. And so that's a bridge you'll cross if it exists and you have to walk across it. But either way, it was definitely not how you wanted to end that game.
No, and like you said, the question going forward, if it's not Derek, who, and then, I mean, man, just this offense has struggled so much this season. Besides obviously the first 2 games, and I know we're going to get into it in our up and down segment, but definitely a big disappointment from that side of the ball against a Giants defense that we thought that was just going to get either run over or picked apart.
Yeah, neither of those things really happened.
No.
I think, and so let's just get into the studs and duds. Let's start with the up because it is a win. So I do want to talk about that. But yeah, the offensive line is definitely in the down just because I had higher hopes for that group. It's the first time we've seen them healthy. Maybe there's a little rust involved. You haven't really been getting a ton of practice for Eric McCoy, Lucas Patrick, Cesar Ruiz. They were all out there. Didn't look like maybe things were clicking. at certain points of that game. But let's just start with the up. Oh no.
What'd you do?
Sometimes when I open our website, Bobby Aber starts talking, and that was not intentional. But and just before we go into this, remember, so final segment's going to be a mailbag. So if you have questions, comments, throw them in the chat, and we'll get to as many of those in the back end as we can. But so first up for me, you got to talk about Bryan Bresee. Like, we can't have this conversation, we can't do this podcast without talking up Bryan Bresee. And he's a guy that I think, when you draft a guy in the first round, you expect them to kind of have their fingerprints on games, right? Like, yeah, that's the expectation. When you draft a guy in the second or third round, your hope is that they develop into a starter, but there's a little bit more wiggle room there. Like, the upside is going to be capped a little bit, because if you were a top end upside player, you would have been a first round pick. Now, Bryan was a late first round pick, so you're going to have a little bit more grace than maybe a top 10 pick. But at the end of the day, like, one of the reasons Peyton Turner is so frustrating is because he was a first round pick. And now we're just settling for him getting on the field.
Right.
Like, there hasn't been a single game throughout the course of his NFL career to this point where you would say he was one of the chief reasons you won the game. Like, he impacted that game in such a way that you won it because he was out there, right? Whether it was one of 7 factors or one of 3 factors or one of 1 factor. Like, there has never been a game that you look at and say, okay, that we won this game because we have Peyton Turner. This was a game that you won because you had Bryan Bresee out there. And for a few reasons, it wasn't just the blocked field goal, but the blocked field goal is such a good indicator of, like, okay, why can he be special? Because when you're 300 pounds and you have the athleticism to leap over an offensive lineman and not hit him, and he did stumble a little bit, but he kept his feet long enough to get up there. Like, the Giants, one of the Giants' 2 wins this year came in exactly that fashion. The difference is Isaiah Simmons is the player that did it for them. One of the best athletes in the NFL. Like, you go back to the combine, he was a first round pick because he was a freak athlete. Like, there's a big difference between Isaiah Simmons doing that and Bryan Bresee doing that. But no, you gotta give him a ton of credit. I was really impressed with what he did. And he also got back, like, the pass rush in that game. They were after Drew Lock all day. They only got 2 sacks. This should have been more. The refs had a really wide definition of what in the area was apparently in that game, because Drew Lock got away with several, like, that's not a pass. What is this? But yeah, you got to give Bresee a lot of credit, I think.
Yes, saving us from having to go through overtime of that game for sure, because for the most part, just terrible football, a snooze fest. It's like, I can't believe I'm watching this. And yeah, the most action was right at the end of the game.
Yeah, it got interesting at the end there. It sure did. This is the conversation I had with Bryan Bresee coming off the field. I apologize in advance because the Audacy intro music is going to play and it's going to be loud.
Bing bong boom boom.
Okay, Bryan, obviously that came down to the wire. What did you see on that last play?
Man, we worked that all week, just in case we had that play in the back pocket. All the guys on the D-line did a great job executing, helping me get up and over, and just threw a hand up like a prayer, and God answered it. So
you seem to have a knack for that. I've seen you bat down a lot of passes. Do you work on that? How much time do you spend throughout the week knocking stuff down?
Honestly, no. I don't know. It's just I guess a knack that I'm blessed with, and I don't know if basketball maybe helped me in my early days, but yeah, man, it's I had a few blocks today, and then that obviously big play at the end, but there wasn't much looking or seeing what was going on in that last play. It was just throwing up a hand and hoping for the best.
Yeah, for this defense, obviously you've had a few opportunities to close out games like this. Hasn't always gone your way. How did it feel to close this one out?
Man, it felt great. Just getting a win like that, just backs against the wall and being able to finish it and get the job done, man, it's awesome. Just super proud of everybody on this team. I mean, just staying the course and getting it done.
All right, man, appreciate it.
Yeah, and the last answer there is funny because it's like the defense didn't really close it out, but it still ended their way, so it feels good. And I'm not putting that game on the defense. Like, I thought the defense actually had an excellent day. And the Giants are just better at anyone in the NFL at finding ways to lose. But like you look at how the defense got set up in that game, the fact that they were able to hold serve as long as they did, the Giants starting field position on their first 6 drives. Look at this. The first drive started at the Saints 48. Next drive, Giants 43. Next drive, Giants 32, which starting a drive at their 32-yard line was essentially as close as they got to being backed up in the first half, which is like you could kick a ball out of the end zone on a kickoff and they wouldn't get to the 32. That was the furthest back they started. Next drive started at the Giants 49. Next drive started at the Saints 48. Next drive started at the Giants 49. So 5 of their first 6 offensive possessions, the Giants, started at their own 42-yard line or better. 2 of them were in Saints territory, and 2 of them were at the Giants 49-yard line, which is basically Saints territory. You know how many points they got? 3. 3 goddamn points that entire span. So you got to give the defense credit. Like they were put in bad positions over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I think that was 6. And they held up, right? You know, and the Giants aren't good, but they were going to try to run the ball. The Saints were able to stop them from running the ball. So, you know, at least the running backs, I think Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary combined for 53 yards on something like 17 carries in that range. So that's a win in terms of what the Saints have been able to do this year against opposing run games. So, no, I think the defensive line in general, Brian Brzee is a big part of that. I thought they had a really strong day.
Yeah, you mentioned that obviously with the D-line too. I saw, what was it, Next Gen stats talking about the amount of pressure that what's his name? I lost it now. Chase Young, was applying, and it was nice to see him at least have some positive news about him.
No, they were in the backfield all day. That's why it's frustrating. You look at the final line, and it's like 2 sacks. How is it only 2 sacks?
Yeah.
And even one of those was on an intentional grounding that they actually called. I mean, Drew Lock could have been called for intentional grounding 5 different times. He threw there was at least 7 or 8 balls that he just threw up. And it was like, you know, a couple of them, like Chase Young, you know, Tyron was pissed for a lot of reasons at the end of that game. One of the reasons was like there was twice that he probably could have had a pick, but the guy in front of him, one of them was Kool-Aid. It was Chase Young trying to get an interception and dropping it, and Tyron was just standing there waiting. And then I can't remember who the second one was, but Kool-Aid McKinstry was there. Oh, it was DeMario who dove in front of him and tried to intercept the ball. And Kool-Aid, if DeMario's not there, the ball just goes right into his hands. And so like Drew Lock was like a hair away from a 3 or 4 interception game. And like, you know, he was living on the edge, and the Saints didn't make it pay.
I kept thinking we were going to see DeVito, and they didn't pull the trigger.
They did one time for that weird zone read. The why, I don't know. The Giants fans got really excited when he ran onto the field, and then it was very similar. If you go back to the Lions game last year, when Taysom Hill would come in, they would cheer, and then Derek Carr would come back in, and they would boo. That's what happened to Drew Lock yesterday. So he must feel loved in that building. But no, I mean, you look at the defense, and you talk about pressures. You can talk about whatever. Colin Saunders had 2 quarterback hits. Demario Davis had a quarterback hit. Carl Granderson had 3 quarterback hits. Brian Brzee had 2 quarterback hits and the sack. Colin Saunders also had a sack. Cam Jordan had 2 quarterback hits. Chase Young had 3 quarterback hits. Brian Brzee, as you mentioned, also had those 2 passes batted down. Yeah. You know, that's something that he's just really good at. I was expecting him to say, like, yeah, I work on that. He doesn't work on that. You know, I think last year he had 6, and this year he has 3. So you're talking about 9 passes defensed in 2 years. Like a lot of defensive backs would take those numbers. You're talking about a defensive tackle who, you know, wasn't even at the top of the rotation last year. So definitely something he's good at. And you can impact games like that. J.J. Watt was always one of the best at just batting balls down, right? And eventually those turn into picks too. Like I don't think that any of his have turned into interceptions yet, but over the course of time, you get your hand on enough balls, it's going to come down in one of your teammates' hands. Now, sometimes it also comes down into Malik Neighbors' hands for a 2-point conversion, but that's neither here nor there. But no, I thought just in general, the defensive line, quarterback runs notwithstanding, had a really strong day.
No, for sure. You end up with Drew Lock as their leading rusher on the day. Like you said, you'll take that all day, any day. It wasn't anything that hurt you too badly. There were some of the Drew Lock runs obviously came at inopportune times. But overall, definitely was impressed with the run D, because that was a big concern when you had a guy like Tracy coming into the game averaging about 5 yards a carry.
Yeah, and he really did nothing. He had the touchdown run, but that was kind of just, it was what it was. Let's move on to another topic. So Kendre Miller, you're going to look at the stat line and you're going to say, okay, 10 carries, 32 yards and a touchdown, 3.2 yards per carry. He's not going to jump off the line. But for one thing, he got through the game. He's healthy. So that's obviously been a challenge for him. And so seeing him get like he didn't get through the Chargers game in week 8. He ended up with an injury. He went into the tent, didn't go into the tent once yesterday, stayed on the field. He's a physical runner, but also a finesse runner, which is really interesting when you watch him. Like, you look at him and you think, oh, he must be like a bruising back. But then you see him like squeeze through some gaps, and he's just able to turn. Like, every time you see him get the ball, it's like he's the type of runner that always seems to get 2 or 3 more yards than you would think are there to be had. There was a run on the sideline that he just kind of like got skinny. Like, I thought he was just going to get hit, go out of bounds with 2-3 yard gain. He got skinny, like skirted through a hole and got like 6 or 7 more yards. That's just the type of runner he is. And that's why when he's out there, he's a weapon for you. And, obviously in a game where maybe you ran the ball a little better, it would mean more, because Alvin, he had 17 carries for 44 yards. It was not a good run day for anybody. But no, I mean, Kendre,
negative runs. Oh man,
they had 10 of them. 10 tackles for loss, I think the Giants had. You know how many the Saints had? Guess. Goose egg. They had 2 sacks. So this technically go down as tackles for loss.
Right.
But they did not have it. They did not tackle, like, for in a game where the Giants averaged 2.8 yards per carry or 2.9 yards per carry, not getting a single tackle behind the line of scrimmage at a running back is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And now the Saints had a couple passes that were taken down behind the line of scrimmage. Giants defense played well. You do have to give them a little credit. Like, I thought their defense did play well, particularly up front. Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, good players. They got after Derek. Saints didn't block him particularly well. But no, so this is Darren Rizzi talking about Kendre Miller's day.
Kendre, again, is showing you why we drafted him where we drafted him. He made some really, really dynamic runs, I thought. Kendre has the unique ability of making an 8-yard run look really, really good. And making people miss, getting some tough yards. And again, just a small sample there. But again, the touchdown run he has where he just keeps his, power. And when I talked about in the beginning of the week, a change of pace back, that's really what I was talking about. A guy that can, just have a little bit of a different style, and that's a big deal. We're losing Taysom. We don't become one-dimensional with Alvin. We have another guy that can get us some tough yards. And so he had a nice kick return today, right? I don't know off the top of my head how many yards, 31-yard kick return. That really nice touchdown run. Some really good, make you miss. So, Kendre's got to just stay consistent. That's been his thing, right? So we got to do that again next week. We got to have another good practice week. We got to just stay healthy, and so those are the things. But you saw the flashes today of the athletic ability. That's the guy we knew we were drafting.
When you've got a guy like that, and he's maybe beaten down mentally a little bit from all the injuries and all the the doghouse talk, which obviously you addressed. How important is getting on the field and actually doing it, as opposed to you can talk all you want?
It's very important. It's very important to get out there and just show. There's you can always sit here and say, well, this and well that, and maybe this and maybe that, but to actually show the proof. And that's the thing about Kendre. The times that he's been on the field for us, like today, you see it. And anybody that knows football sees it. You see a very good running back. That's what you see. And again, is he there yet? Has he reached the pinnacle? No. He's got plenty of room for growth. But staying healthy, staying consistent for him is the big thing. And actually coming out and showing it rather than just saying, oh, he looks good in practice, or he looked really good in college. You saw it today what he did. So
he also had a kick return, brought back 33 yards. There haven't been many successful kick returns for the Saints this year, and he has 2 of them. Another one was Taysom Hill had a nice return. It's not something that Kendre's done. I think he said yesterday he hasn't returned a kick prior to week 8 against the Chargers. He hadn't returned a kick since high school. So, it's something he can do. The more you can do, the better. And the Saints I wouldn't say they've been particularly good on kick returns this year, which is kind of disappointing when you're talking about, Rizzi and his impact in that whole role change. But no, I just think he adds an element to this team that they need, particularly with some of these missing weapons. And we'll find out more this week about Chris Olave and exactly where he's at. He was on the field each of the last 2 weeks in terms of travel with the team this week, which is good to see. Week 15 will be the first week he could potentially come back. I don't expect him to come back, but he could. But no, it's good to see Kendre out there. He's I think in the sense of like just building confidence and in the fact that he can be an NFL player, and he's not going to have the rug pulled out from under him the way it seemed to happen this year a lot. I think that's good for him, and so I'm rooting for him. He's a nice kid. He works. I think he works hard. I think he's just had a lot of bad luck.
I really wanted more carries for him in the game. He did have 10, but I felt like there could have been more. I do get that it was his first game back in action in a while.
Yeah, I think 10. I think that's a good number, right? Like Alvin got 17, he got 10. Like I think that's about where you want it to be in a game where you sustained more offense. Maybe you could have done a little more. Saints didn't have a lot of extended drives. But like that touchdown run was, both of his career touchdown runs have been similar in that way of like, I didn't think either was going to get into the end zone when the play started. The other one was week 18 against the Falcons, where he kind of did the same thing. He was like, the play was kind of dead to the outside. He cut it back and just kind of powered his way in. No, he's got a good combination, like finesse and power. He'll tell you that himself. Like he takes pride in that. Like it's not. And I think that's important for a running back to not just be okay, I'm going to run hard and see if I can get 2 yards out of this. Like, I want to find a hole. I want to find a gap, accelerate through it. I don't need to be running full speed at all times. Like if you ask Alvin, I bet he would tell you that like he almost never runs full speed.
Right. It's amazing.
But when he does, he has a reason to, because he's got a seam and he's going to hit it. And if you're trying to just go 100 all the time, you're going to miss gaps. You're not going to see cutback lanes. So I think that's what he does well. And so hopefully he can keep that going.
No, definitely, anxious to see more from him. Plus, I was lucky enough before this game, I grabbed him off the fantasy football waiver wire. Yep. So I want to see more usage in him.
Yeah, I got him in a couple leagues, mainly because I could still put him on IR for this week.
Right, right.
I also got Isaac Guerrero. That worked out for me, although he's dealing with an injury. But now you look at a team like the Lions, and like what makes the Lions so effective?
Right.
Like they have a really good offensive coordinator. They have a lot of playmakers, but it's that two-headed running back tandem of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs that just it's like so difficult to stop. And they're able to sustain drives. They're able to force defenses to do things they're uncomfortable with. They can't sit back in the shell coverage because you're going to pound them over the head. That's what NFL teams want to do right now is they want to sit back with 2 deep safeties and say, we're going to keep everything in front of us, right? Well, if you can rip off 5-6 yard runs consistently, they're not going to be able to do that. And that opens everything up down the field. So, I hope that you can see something like that with Alvin and Kendre. Like there is more than enough bandwidth on this offense to support 2 running backs, and you can start getting on the field at the same time. The Kendre's touchdown run, Alvin was on the field. Kendre got the ball and he scored. So we'll see, but he's definitely a stock up player for me. Anyone else you want to mention?
Hopefully, can be our new version of Boom and Zoom there.
Right. Well, when has the Saints offense been better than when you had Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara like both hitting at the same time? Because I don't know if it has been.
The good old days with airheads on the sideline.
Yeah.
So much fun going on. Yeah.
But all right. So a couple more that I want to hit. We don't have to spend a ton of time on them. I thought the tight ends had the tight ends have been really coming on. Definitely not guys that you're going to talk about a ton throughout the course of the week, but Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau combined for 7 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Both guys had 30-plus yard receiving plays. Foster's was this really pretty one-handed catch. Like, he'll do stuff occasionally where you're just like, oh, yeah, that's right. Foster Moreau is like a 1% athlete. Like, he is an elite athlete, and you forget because he doesn't really do a ton, and he's mostly blocking. But he can get stuff done in the passing game, and Derek trusts him, obviously, as much as anybody. But no, I think those guys, if you're going to sustain offense, you need those guys to be involved. They need to be better in the blocking game.
Right. I was going to say that. Not so great in the blocking, but yeah, at least they were more involved with the pass catching.
Yeah, you need one or the other. It'd be nice if you had both. But if you're not going to be an elite blocker, I do need you to make impact plays down the field. Dallin Halker also got involved. His first career catch. It was a nice grab. It was 10 yards, first down. So like you're talking about tight ends in this game, 100 yards. I always, that's kind of how I look at tight ends. I think people have the tendency to look at, Foster only had 2 catches for 40 yards. Juwan had 4 catches for 50 yards, right? Like, neither of those numbers are jump off the page. But when I look at the tight end production, I put them together and I say, what did you get out of the tight end position? I don't care who it was, right? And when you're talking about 7 catches for 100 yards, that's a really good tight end day and a touchdown. So you got to give those guys credit.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, positive to see there. The blocking, not so great though.
No, and then they'll get better. I mean, I don't think that it was all on the tight end. I think in the run game, it's the tight ends and pass protection. I think it was more about the edges and the tackles just not getting the job done. But a couple more. I thought Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry played well. Again, like it's easy to get caught up in the last couple drives and say like, oh, what happened? Again, we talked about like you look at where the Giants started all those drives from. That's prime shot play territory. That's we're going for it. We're gonna test you, and they held up. I thought Alontae Taylor had a very good day. Kool-Aid had a solid day, but some issues. There was one play where he just kind of lost the ball, didn't know where it was, and I want to say it was either Malik or Wandale that came down with it. There was several plays that Drew Lock just put up a prayer and it got answered. So you don't put that on the defensive backs. I just think both those guys, they're improving week over week, right? And you're seeing them get better. Particularly Kool-Aid, you're kind of learning about in real time. Alontae, I don't know if he allowed a catch in that game. One where he kind of dug the ball out on Malik, who I wouldn't say, I don't know what percentage he was playing at. Definitely wasn't 100%. But I just thought, there's areas of this team that I'm watching closely, even beyond they're still mathematically alive in the playoff race, but that's not what I'm really watching for. I'm watching, okay, can these young defensive backs develop over the course of this season? So you go into next year feeling like these guys can get the job done. These young tight ends, like what can you get out of them? The offensive line, how does that look? Are these tackles regressing, which I think they are a tiny bit. Isaiah Foskey got on the field in that game. Which sounds like nothing, but he got 0 snaps like at all this season. So getting him in the rotation will be good. Stuff like that, and so I think to this point you've seen positivity. Even in a game that was ugly, you can pull positives out of it, and that's what we're hoping to see.
I'll give shout outs too. I thought DeMario had a decent game, and also Ugo Mate leading the team in tackles.
Ugo's just doing his thing.
Yeah, man.
He's not going to win every rep, but he's going to compete every rep. Like you're going to get competition. He had one really nice breakup late in the game, over the middle of the field. He's a little guy, which is it's funny watching him go up against Wandale Robinson because like Wandale's like 5'8". It's the first time all year that Ugo's had a size advantage. But no, and DeMario, yeah, he got that interception. He joked after the Browns game that he was ordering a new set of hands in the mail. Apparently those came in. But what now he needs to order is a new pair of legs, because what the hell are you doing, man? Why wouldn't you run? Why didn't you run the ball?
I still haven't gone back to look at it, but I guess he didn't slip because that's what I was thinking.
No, I think he was just so excited that he intercepted it that he forgot he was supposed to return it.
Okay.
There was no one around him. And he figured it out after. But it was like he went back to college rules and was like, I went down, so I can't run. It's like, no, go run. What are you doing? Because I don't know if he would have scored. He scored after he finally remembered to run, but that was because the play was dead. Like when you kind of give yourself up, you can't then run. And that's a very discretionary thing for the refs, but it is to protect the defense because there's rules in place that like once you give yourself up, if they hit you, then it's a penalty on them. So you can't take advantage of that rule. So once the refs deem that you have not made any attempt to return it, they will blow the play dead. But I mean, if he and that was a big point in the game. Like, the reason you got to a field goal attempt to tie it for the Giants was, well, you had to give him the ball back after that. And so if he returns that to 20, 30 yards even, and you're talking about, you might have a field goal to go up 6 instead of 3. So they have to try to score, which, I don't know, maybe that would have worked against you. But, and maybe he scores. Like, who on the Giants offense is really trying to tackle a motivated Demario Davis trying to get into the zone? Like, he runs like a fullback when he gets the ball in his hands. So that was definitely a kind of a brain cramp moment for him. Because there was no one around him. It's not like he thought he was touched. I think he just forgot in that moment. He got too excited. He doesn't get a lot of interceptions.
Yeah, it was definitely. That's why I said I was wondering. I'm like, did he slip? Nope.
But he caught it. I genuinely think that's what it was. Is he's had so many close interceptions that he finally caught one, and his mind, that's all he was thinking about, was like, I got it.
Well, more body parts to order for Demario, like you said.
He start. It's like going to be the Frankenstein of linebackers. Is just start installing more and more body parts. But yeah, that's all I got in terms of stock up guys. Is there anyone else? Otherwise, we can move on.
No, not really. Overall, even though it was a win, it wasn't the easiest stock ups, segment, because it was just an ugly overall game.
It was ugly. The only other guy I'll mention is MVS, and I'm not even saying stock up so much as I thought what I liked about this game is, it wasn't all just shot plays.
Right.
He was your leading receiver, 4 catches, 51 yards. The long was 22. So, he's making impact plays in the offense. It was that he was the one with the 3rd and 5 conversion when you got pinned back at your 2-yard line. Again, this game went every way the Giants could have hoped it went, other than scoring points, which that's such a Giants thing to say. They lose games in ways that no one else would even consider losing games. But no, I just thought, like, you need a wide receiver that can move the chains. And he was that for them in this game. I didn't think it was a particularly good day for a lot of the wide receivers. I thought Kevin Austin had a rough day. Dante Pettis wasn't really involved. Cedric Wilson had a nice grab on a 3rd down to
I was
convert.
like, whoa, Cedric Wilson is around.
I keep forgetting he's there.
Right.
He'll have like 1 catch a week. I'm like, oh, that's right. Good for him. But no, that's it. So let's wrap that up. We'll come back. We'll talk about the duds, and then we'll come back in the final segment with a live mailbag. So get your comments, questions in there. I imagine we could talk a good bit about Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, that conversation, and we'll see how that goes. But again, this is Inside Black and Gold. I am Jeff Nowak. We're coming at you after the Saints beat the Giants 14-11. The Saints are now 5-8. Only 1 game different from last year. Last year they were 5-7. So these 2 seasons are actually not that far off. But either way, we're going to talk about what went wrong, which a good bit went wrong. But we'll talk about it. This is Inside Black and Gold. Make sure to subscribe. We'll be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak here, coming at you after a long flight home from New York. Wasn't that cold? The Saints lucked out, but they did play like it was cold, at least on offense. 14 points, definitely not a dream number for the Saints. Very close to the same result we had in 2021. If you recall that game, the Saints led by 11 with a little under 7 minutes to go in that game. Giants came all the way back, kicked the field goal, forced overtime, then won in overtime. This game, it was a 11-point lead with about 4 minutes remaining, and the Giants almost came all the way back. But we don't have to talk about that. Saints won. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller. And to me, the first stock down is, I think it was fair to look at, hey, weeks 1 and 2, the Saints had their starting offensive line out there, and they looked like world beaters. They looked like studs. It looked like the best group in the NFL. You were running the ball, you were hitting the play action, you were hitting over the top, and you don't have the weapons that you once had on offense. But you like in my head, I was like, you're getting them back. Like this is gonna look different. This is gonna look like a stud offensive line. It didn't look like that.
Against a bad run defense.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because the Giants kind of threw bodies at the problem. Like the Giants just went man up on the outside. They said, hey, we're not letting you run the ball, right? We're going to go into that bare front the way the Eagles did. They're going to put 5 down at the line of scrimmage and, force the Saints to prove they could beat them on the outside with wide receivers that they didn't think could beat them on the outside. And that plan worked a good bit of the time.
Yeah.
In part because, you couldn't pass protect. And you're not generating any positive plays on first down. You're getting stopped behind the line of scrimmage. So your play action is not going to work. Like no one's going to buy that when you're that far backed up. And, Derek, I wouldn't say he had his best day. There were some off target throws, but it's like he was under duress the entire game. And you're not going to get a lot done on offense when you are not generating positive plays on first down. And when you are not generating a clean pocket for a quarterback that doesn't want to run around. So it's tough. Like, I don't think he had a kind of a Derek Carr game. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible, did enough for you to win. That 98-yard touchdown drive was really impressive. I thought at that point that they kind of figured something out. They didn't. So yeah, I mean, I just thought the offensive line they weren't terrible. I just had higher expectations, and they did not deliver in that game.
Tally and Trevor had bad days for sure.
Yeah, Tally, I think he might be hitting a little bit of a rookie wall. One thing that's driving me nuts with Tally specifically is like, how many times do you have to get called for lining up in the backfield before you adjust what you're doing? That's at least the 3rd or 4th time this season
for sure
that he's been called for an illegal formation. It's a point of emphasis. Refs are calling it. If your helmet is not bisecting the hip of the center when the ball is snapped, you are not on the line of scrimmage, and you are getting called for illegal formation. It's been happening all year. It's happened to Tally. I don't think it's happened to Trevor. So, like, how he is lining up is not working, and he has not fixed it. It seems like once a game, he just kind of loses track of where he is. Doesn't maybe, sometimes the issue is like when you're standing straight up in pass protection, because you're trying to get back in that set, because you're, when you're going forward, when you're firing off the ball and you're blocking in the run game, you're leaning forward, right? And when you're pass protecting, I think there's this tendency to kind of get further back in your stance so you can get out quicker. And I think when there's times where he does that and he ends up too kind of parallel or straight up and down. And so where he was, he could be standing in the same spot, but his helmet's not in the same spot. And then you get called. So that's been annoying to me because it's like, that's a very correctable issue and it hasn't been corrected. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing, but like the Giants defensive line, it's funny because that's their strength. You look at a defensive line that went into the season with Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence. And it's like, you have 3 all-pro caliber players on that defensive line. There's no Dexter Lawrence anymore. And so you saw the Giants get really aggressive with their linebackers at the line of scrimmage. And Micah McFadden, I think he had 4 of their tackles for loss. He was just firing off the ball, getting into the backfield. And the Saints really just didn't have an answer.
Yeah, I thought Burns was more of a problem than he showed up on the stat sheet, too.
Now, he was in the backfield a lot.
Yeah.
Right? And they weren't really buying the play action. They were just firing up field and going for it. And I mean, if you were able to run the ball, then that would have burned them. No pun intended, but they just weren't able to do that. So no, I mean, like I think that it's probably fair to look at the offensive line and say, these guys haven't played together since week 3, right? In week 3, going into week 3, they had played exclusively together. Like that group had been playing all training camp and they were, with one mind and it was all smooth. This week, Eric hadn't practiced. Eric missed 7 games, got back to practice for a week, missed a week of practice, was limited all last week, and then full on Friday. Lucas Patrick has missed multiple games, hadn't played since week 8. was limited in practice, then full on Friday. Cesar Ruiz was dealing with the concussion protocol, so he was limited. Obviously, a lot going on that week. And so, I think that it's probably reasonable to look at that group and say they're rusty. Like that was not necessarily the best you're going to get. I hope that's true. I hope that's what was going
on. Looking here, Jeff, I know it kind of derails us a little bit in our segment, but Ian Rappaport putting out Derek Carr did in fact suffer a significant fracture in his non-throwing hand. He's expected to miss several weeks based on where we are in the season. That's almost certainly season ending.
Yeah, so that's that's why I hate recording podcasts because they get
that's all right. It's live and in the moment,
right? But no, that makes sense, and we'll talk about that. Let's talk about that more on the back end.
Okay.
But yeah, that's going to be okay. Haener versus Rattler. What's the conversation? And we saw how this offense kind of fell off a cliff in the 3 weeks he was out. So that's a negative. But the good news, and this kind of gets us back on the track here, is the offensive line is healthy. So whichever backup quarterback you throw out there, he's at least going to have the starting offensive line in front of him, which was not the case for Spencer when he took over last time.
The only thing, they didn't look healthy against this terrible, Giants front. So I'm a little concerned.
Well, again, it's not a terrible front when you're talking about the edges of Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. So we'll see. I'm hoping that they kind of, with a week of practice and they can get back on track, but we'll see. Another down for me, killer instinct with this team does not exist. Like this game was just begging to go the same way that the Panthers game did. I honestly thought that it was a cowardly decision by the Giants. Think about this. Like you're a coach that's presiding over a 2-10 football team. You have lost 7 games in a row. You are just creeping toward that franchise record 9-game losing streak, which is what happened in Pat Shurmur's final year before he got fired. You lost 9 games in a row, right? You go down the field. You are down 3 points. Everything has been breaking your way. There's 11 seconds left. I think they even had a timeout. And you're kicking the field goal on 3rd down? What? What are you protecting? What are you saving? Go for a touchdown. What are you doing? Like, you're playing for overtime? Go on 4th down. What are you doing? Why would you do that? That's the decision of coach that should get fired makes in that moment. Because I took a deep breath. I exhaled when Graham Gano came onto the field because I was like, he might make this, but I think 2 more shots at the end zone, they're going to score. What do you have?
Definitely concerned because the Giants the offense was picking up at the end there.
The defense was on its heels. The defense had just blown an 11-point lead.
Right.
So what? You're going to let them off the hook like that in front of your home fans and lose a game that way? Let it come down to a blocked field goal? Terrible. And there was time. It's not like there was 2 seconds left and it was you either make this play. Even if you kicked it on 4th down, you had time to take another shot at the end zone and win that game. And instead you bailed? That's terrible. So anyway, I don't think the Saints defense got bailed out because if the Giants, I don't know, scored a touchdown there, all the talk today would be about how they blew another game. And all the talk would be about how the offense couldn't ice the game. The defense couldn't hold up. They got torn to shreds by the wheels of Drew Lock on a 4th and 10 or 4th and 12 or whatever it was. Let's see.
Well, that's why I thought it was odd too. I know you talked to Cam Jordan in the locker room and he talked about it was good to have the defense close out a game. I'm like, did you?
Right. They didn't. They really didn't. And man, the Giants faced on their touchdown drive, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 18, and 4th and 10. They never got off the field. The Saints never got off the field. They even tipped up the 2-point conversion. The Giants got that too. On their field goal attempt drive that ended with the block kick, they had another 4th and 10 that they converted. So the Saints had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to finish off that game, and they let it a lot like living on the edge. What is living on the edge? Living on the edge is needing every possible opportunity to win a game that you had already won. Like, get off the field on one of those fourth downs, it's over. You know, and I think the DeMario's interception, the funny thing is without a return, you're actually better off knocking it down on DeMario's interception, because that actually gave them 20-something yards when if you would have gotten the ball at wherever they snapped it from, which was like the 38. But I'm not going to blame DeMario for catching the ball. I'll blame him for not running it back. Either way, good teams put away games. Bad teams allow whatever happens to happen. And that's the Saints this year. That's what happened in the Panthers game. That's what happened in the Falcons game, right? Like, you had chances to win these games and you didn't. And that's just been the story of the season. And that's why it's basically over right now.
Yeah, the end of that game was definitely you were watching it going, we can't be going through this again. There's no way they're gonna cough this up and end up losing this game after you've just been in the lead the entire time, and it seemed to be slipping away. Thankfully for that block kick, because I didn't want to see overtime at all.
No, that's why I was like, why didn't you just try to score a touchdown? Because you really want to play overtime in this game? Like, even the Giants, like, why? What like, win a game or lose a game? Don't go out like that. Like, they took the coward's way out and they lost anyway. Anyway, all right. One more down for me, like one more real down, and it's Matt Hayball. There was a clip of Darren Rizzi on the sideline, and I watched this happen like 10 feet away from me. He was going ballistic.
Yeah.
Ballistic. And it's like, you can take the coach out of the special teams coordinator, but you can't take the special teams coordinator out of the coach. Because I don't know if I've ever seen a head coach go after a punter as aggressively as
you got Alvin stepping in like, yo, relax.
Yeah. And here's Darren Rizzi talking about that after the game.
That's what you're calling it, a passionate exchange. A passionate exchange. Well, listen, I'm passionate about everything. And listen, everybody has a job to do. Everybody has a 1/11th to do. You guys that follow our team know that I'm a big accountability guy, and that was a big part of our game plan today. And he wasn't executing the game plan. So I'm gonna say this: his last punt was outstanding, and it really helped us. Actually, I think his last two punts, second to last punt in particular, was really, really good. Pitting them back, didn't get any return yards. That's really what we were trying to do all day. Our first three punts weren't good enough, and so that passionate exchange, I let him know that that's exactly how I felt. So it probably came across a little bit more than that, but me and Matt are fine.
Appeared to be talking to both of y'all during the exchange.
Yeah. Listen, I love AK because AK is a guy that's very, very observant and sees everything. And he kind of, you guys know that have followed AK for a while. He's a little bit of like a lay in the weeds guy, but he sees everything. He's very, very observant, and he just was trying to be the peacemaker there. So, and he came back around and said, "Riz, man, I never know you'd lose your shit on the punter like that." So I mean, he was just trying to calm me down, just trying to calm. Listen, he's a team guy, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and so I went and I tracked Matt Hayball's kicks. So he kicked the ball 7 times. He punted the ball 7 times, which is too many. It's too many. But the issue with Matt in this game, so whatever the scheme was on his kicks, right? Whatever you were hoping would happen on his kicks, notwithstanding, because I don't know exactly what the plan was. I think the one to Amir Smith-Marset that really pissed off Darren Rizzi, even though it didn't count, was, he's trying to kick it to the edge of the field, and he just pins it right down the middle, and like, that's not even where your coverage is going. So you're just asking for a big return. And I think what was happening is Matt was trying to kick bigger kicks because he was backed up a little bit and he just lost track of the direction. But so first quarter, punted from the 21 to the Giants 44, 8-yard return. That's a 27-yard net from your own 21. That's where, when you're kicking from your 21, that's where you should be able to put your full leg into it and really, like, that's not a Pro Bowl vote leader kind of kick right there. Let's put it that way. Next kick from the Saints 31 to the Giants 33, 11-yard return, 35-yard net. Next kick, which was the touchdown that got negated, from the Saints 13 to the Giants 44. Amir Smith-Marset returned it for a touchdown. It was a hold, ended up being a 38-yard net kick with the penalty. Think about that. Another one in the second quarter from the Saints, 25 to the Giants, 37, no return, 38-yard net. Third quarter from the Saints, 46 to the Giants, 18, 36-yard net. And that's the kick that really bothers me, because when you're kicking from your 46, I want to pin these guys. And then that's like, you look at Matt and you look at his numbers, and he's really high on the inside the 20 kicks. But I'd love to see a breakdown, and one of these days I'll go through it. How many of those inside the 20 kicks are beyond the 15? Because it feels like there's been a lot of them. I feel like there's been a lot of Saints punts that will go down as inside the 20, but it's like the 19. And like I would rather almost you kick it in the end zone, because at least they're not going to return it. If you're like, that's not a successful punt. Now, his best punt of the day came in a big moment. It was the fourth quarter, 3:16 remaining. He punted from the Saints 38, pinned him at the 11. They did return it 3 yards. It was a 48-yard net kick. And like, those are the kicks he's capable of making. Then the final one was decent. Again, it was from the Saints 39 to the Giants 18, but they had a 9-yard return. So it was a 34-yard net kick. So, I mean, he punted 7 times. If you erase the one for the holding, so you're talking about 6 kicks with no penalties. He had one that was a 40-plus yard net kick. The others were 27, 35, 38, 36, 34. So he had as many sub-30-yard kicks as he had 40-plus yard net kicks. And it's just not good enough. Like, I go around the league and I see some of these punters, and look at what Jamie Gillen did. I mean, he had 2 kicks that, like, I don't even know how you do what he did, but like, he kicked it down to the 2, and it was like it had a magnet on it and just straight out of bounds. And like, I don't know if I have seen a single Matt Hayball kick down inside the 5 this year. I honestly don't think there's been one. And if there's been kicks inside the 10, it's maybe 2 or 3. The Saints are a team that punts from near midfield a lot. So that's not acceptable. And I don't even think that's what Darren Rizzi's mad about, but that's what I'm annoyed about, because you're not taking advantage of it. Like, Lou Hedley had several kicks inside the like, we complained all year about Lou Hedley. He was down in kicks inside the 15 constantly. And I have not seen that this year. I don't think it's what's costing you games, but I think this may be a one and done with Matt, is kind of what I'm talking about.
In the punter search again, you think?
I don't see why not. Like, you could do better than this. And I say that because I look around the NFL at all the punters who are doing better. Like, if you had Thomas Morstead, you would be better off. If you had Blake Gillikin, you would be better off. I don't know why they're trying to get cute with these. I think Darren really likes his Australian rugby style punters, but I just don't think it's been effective. And I think, like, I'm okay. I don't know. We'll see. But that's my last one. You got any more?
A little slight dig on long-range outdoor groupie.
I feel personally responsible.
The one, I guess, the 54-yarder, definitely that wasn't good. But the other one, wasn't really you could consider a real kick for him.
Yeah, that one. I think they made the decision to kick it when, because the refs had initially spotted it, which would have been like a 56-yarder or 57-yarder, and then they moved it back. It was on the Mark MVS pass interference that he drew, and they changed it from the 37 or 35 to the 42.
Yeah,
which made it into a 60-yard kick. And honestly, I thought at that point they should just go for it and throw a Hail Mary or something, because you're not making that kick. And the reason it gets blocked is because when you're kicking from that distance, you have to kick it at a lower trajectory.
Right. I didn't blame him for that one.
Distance as possible, and so the hands are in that range, and somebody got a hand on it. So I don't. That one is kind of like, it's going to go down as a miss from 50 plus.
Right.
You set him up to fail in that instance. If you're indoors, I'm okay with it. Outside in that wind, no.
I don't remember what it was last year against Green Bay, but it kind of reminded me like that. I was like, oh, great, another outside miss for groupie when you needed it.
Yeah, but he hit from 50 plus twice against the Patriots outside, so it's not like he's never made kicks outside. He was the player of the week after that game. But no, it's funny because I feel personally responsible, because I put out a tweet to point out that he's the first Saints kicker in the franchise history to make 5 50-plus kicks in his season. He was 5 for 5 at that point. The reason I posted that was in part because, well, one, to note that it was like a franchise record that no one ever talked about, but also, the 2 of the next 3 games were going to be very difficult for him to maintain that, right? I don't think you wanted to be sending him out there attempting 50-plus yard kicks in that game, regardless of who he was. I don't think the Giants wanted to be going out there and attempting 50-plus yard kicks in that game. Like Graham Gano kicks in that building all the time, and I didn't think he was. I think he made one from like mid-40s, but I don't think he's going to have an easy time making those kicks. So
yeah, our in-studio producer Charlie Long was quick to point out Jeff jinxed him.
Yeah. It's his fault. We can say that, but I kind of put it more in like that was my prediction, was that he was going to struggle in these 2 games specifically. So I would put it more as I was right. And I wanted to point it out before this game because I think we're going to look at this game like, oh, he missed twice, he's having a bad year. And like, no, he's had a great year. And 2 of his 2 misses from 50+ this year are in adverse weather conditions, which makes it difficult to kick it. So yeah, I mean, I don't feel any differently about Blake after that game than I did going into that game, is my larger point. He made the extra points, which ended up being important. So yeah, that's it.
And I think we talked about a little, obviously, the last segment, just having a little better of situational awareness for Derek and doing that dive on a 2nd down play. I know he's going for it, and I appreciate the passion and the want to get that 1st down, but come on, man.
Yeah, and it's like you don't want to say something is selfish when
right.
Like, hey, you're selling out for your team, but you didn't need that in that moment. You're winning a game. You already made a successful play. You set up 3rd and medium, 3rd and short. Get out of bounds, survive. No, you try to dive over the top. It's hero ball is what it is. And sometimes hero ball is necessary, right? Sometimes you need that. You didn't need it in that moment. That was I don't get to run the ball very much, so I'm going to try to make the most out of this.
I saw someone tweet out, it's like, someone tell Rizzi that Derek Carr is not Taysom Hill. I'm like, that's not what he was thinking there.
It did feel like a Taysom Hill play. But it worked. Like, it was like, here's the thing. It was a successful play. Derek's got to be smarter than that. You got to understand your value to the team.
Yeah.
And now it's looking, Rap tweeted it out. We're talking about probably done for the year. So any pipe dream playoff hopes you had, as if that, like, if you seriously believe that, I don't think anyone did. That's definitely gone now. Like, if you win the next 2 games or the backup, that'll be something we talk about for a long time against Washington and Green Bay. But hey, at least Derek doesn't have to play in the cold apocalypse game now.
Hey, there you go, Jeff. We'll just go look at it. Who is our Nick Foles right now?
That's it. We got it. That's the answer. But all right, that's all I got. Anyone else you want to be mean to before we move on?
No, I think we definitely pointed it out. And even with mentioning Groupie and Carr at the end there, it's kind of like catching strays. I'm almost sorry for bringing it up, but it's just like it was disappointing with both ends there.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, we gotta be mean to somebody, and we can't just be mean to the Giants. I called them the most beatable team in the NFL before the game, and I'm still on that hill because that team sucks, man. That team sucks. They suck. Dayball is. I don't even think Dayball's a bad coach. I think the team is like they've taken years off of his life, the same way that Matt Hayball took a year off of Darren Rizzi's life yesterday. Like, they were both, those guys on the sidelines were just like losing their minds for good reason.
I'm sure you get rid of GM and coach both. What are the Giants going to do? We'll have to see.
I don't think they're going to fire either guy, just because like you hamstring a coach with a quarterback that was not his. You hamstring a GM with a quarterback he didn't draft. Firing them at this point would just be, I don't know. Like, you got to get him a quarterback, and this is the draft where they're going to be in position to get one.
Right.
So I don't know. Like, you hired him for a reason.
Fantastic.
You're not going to fire a guy just because somebody decided to buy a plane. Like, you needed this season to get your quarterback, because they clearly, I don't know. Like, they're going to draft Shador, and that's going to be a Madhouse or Cam Ward or whoever it is. Malik's going to get his guy. So we'll see. But all right.
I'm in Shador to New York. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. But all right, let's wrap up this segment. We're going to come back. We're going to do a quick mailbag. talk a lot about Derek Carr, talk about Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler. We're going to dive into that conversation. And that is all. We got some comments flowing in. So take a quick break, start as many of those comments as possible. We will come back. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Otherwise, stick the F around. What else are you doing? And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller coming at you after the Saints beat the Giants 14-11, but it came at a cost. And that cost was Derek Carr's functionality in that left hand, which Ian Rappaport, the NFL Network, has reported is significant enough to likely keep him out the rest of the season. You know, maybe not, maybe a couple weeks and he's back. Either way, this is going to be the most games Derek Carr has ever missed in this season. Because I don't think he had ever missed more than one or two prior to this. Like that's the wild thing is he's been a pretty healthy guy throughout the course of his career, or at least he hasn't dealt with a lot of injuries. This is going to be another one that keeps him out. And so the Saints are going to look to a backup. So that's going to be a lot of what we talk about. It's going to be a mailbag segment, but a lot of the questions are going to be about Derek Carr. So we can just start with that. Michael Morgan points out, just reported Carr out for the season now. Shake my head. Yeah, I don't think it's definitely out for the season, but it sounds, it's like I think it's going to be a situation where, week 18 at this point, if you can come back, you're not coming back. Same thing with Chris Olave. Like, is he technically definitely done for the season? No, but what is the incentive to bring a guy back for a meaningless week 17, week 18 game, which will be the case pretty much if you lose to Washington this week. I don't think it'll be technically a elimination game for the Saints just because of how bad the NFC South is, but for all intents and purposes, either you win this week or you start packing your bags. You're not making any plans with 8 and 9. Like, you would need to get to 9 and 8 to really feel like, okay,
we've talked about that. Basically, had to win out.
Yeah, and it's still on the table even without Derek Carr, but it's unlikely. Tim Fabenro says, "Hey guys, just want to say good work, but was that Carr's worst game? The amount of misses to wide receivers and checkdowns is crazy." I don't think it was his worst game. I just think, when you're looking at a team that doesn't have a lot of weapons, I think you're trying to be safe. And when you are starting so many drives with negative plays, the Saints had 10 plays on offense, not including the sacks, that went for negative yards. Think about that. That's a lot of plays. You don't run that many plays in a game. I mean,
there was way too many times in that we saw Alvin -2, and I was like, what the hell's going on?
The Saints only ran 66 plays in that game. So 15% of the Saints' offensive plays in that game went backwards. Actually, that's more than that. If you include the sacks, almost 20% of the Saints' plays in that game, of their 66 offensive plays, went in reverse. So, that's not on the quarterback. Maybe the sacks, but I think at least one of them, Brian Burns, was coming in on a play action that he did not buy, and like the second card turned around, he was there. So it was just a bad offensive game. The quarterback definitely didn't play great, but I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like he said worse games than that is my larger point. Like if you're talking about this season, it's tougher. I don't think he played particularly well against the Chiefs. Last year, he played very poorly against the Vikings. So there's been I don't put that up in the pantheon of bad Derek Carr games is kind of what I'm saying. He gave you a chance to win and you won. The interception was kind of a jump ball. Again, under pressure.
It was a long punt.
Exactly. It was a third down play where you kind of turned, you were going to punt either way and up at like their 18-yard line, which is exactly where Matt Hayball would have put him. Because that's where he punts to. I don't know. You won a game. I'm not going to give the quarterback too much grief, but he is done for the year. So that's going to, again, most likely done for the year. So
right.
Be the last we see from him. And Darren Rizzi is going to talk in a few moments here. So you'll get a better picture from him on exactly what the Saints are looking at. We'll see if he makes an announcement on the quarterback. But Steve, we talked about this a bit early on. What would your move be if you're the Saints? Who are you going with the rest of the way?
I definitely want to give Haener his shot. We talked about this a little earlier about, the Rattler got his time. Obviously, he didn't have the full accompaniment of an starting offensive line, though. So I know that's not fair either. But I'm going with Haener, at least in this game against the Commanders. And maybe you have it where you're rotating both. I know that's not the sexiest or greatest thing to think about, but you want to get a look at both of these quarterbacks, no doubt.
Yeah, no, so, here's the thing. There's 4 games left. You don't have to go with the same quarterback all 4 games.
Right.
And I think Jake has done the work and he's there. I'd like to see him at least get one start.
Yeah.
Just to have an idea of what you have with him. And when he's played, I thought he looked reasonably good. And I'm not talking about, these last few, like the last couple drives against the Chiefs where he was thrown to the Wolves, the last drive against the Giants where, there's nothing game planned for him whatsoever. In the games he went in against the Broncos, he led the offense well. And these were drives that you weren't trying to kill the clock or whatever. When he went in against the Chargers, he generated some offense. I don't know. Like, I would like to see at least one of these games go to him. Now, does that have to be week 15 against the Commanders? No. But I would like to see one. And if I'm doing it, I give this game to Jake. I give week 15 against the Commanders to Jake. And a part of that is because, hey, you're going to kind of throw the same playbook in there. You're not going to change the offense a ton because I think what Jake can do can mirror what Derek can do. Whereas I think if it's Spencer, you are changing things a little bit more. So I don't know. If I'm making that decision this week, I'm going with Jake. And if the next 2 games you lose them, fine. Week 17, week 18, which are going to be much better matchups for Saints offense. Let's be real. If I'm throwing somebody to the Wolves, which is going to be the case over these next 2 weeks, like 2 playoff teams who have a lot on the line, I'm probably going to throw Jake to the Wolves and see how he handles it. And if he doesn't handle it well and you lose both these games and he doesn't give you any reason to continue starting him, you have 2 games left with no pressure on them because you're eliminated. And you can just say, all right, Spence, let's see what you got. Because I don't think you're quitting on either guy.
I hate to see him be the number 2 guy again, though, and get leaped by Spencer. That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, again, it's not about fair. Right. It's not about like, oh, this would be unfair. It's about who you think has the best upside. But I don't know yet what we have in Jake Haener.
Right.
Like I've seen Spencer start for 3 games. We have an idea of what he's capable of, even if he was kind of put in tough situations. This won't be a less tough situation. But I don't know. Like you kept Jake around. I think you should give him a shot at the starting job in terms of what can you do this week, even if it's just 1 week. I don't know. Like, and again, it's not like
work. To me, he's earned it. So yeah, let's see Haener for a freaking game since we've seen the Rattler show for 3, and like you mentioned, it doesn't have to be the rest of the way. You can rotate if you want to. Yeah,
and I mean, like 2 of the last 3, we've seen Spencer start. Like we kind of saw what what he's working with and where he needs to improve and what works well for him. But it was nothing that you're like, I desperately want to see more of that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all about development. And
he had Olave then.
I don't want to see him go into another game and get benched. What would that do for him? Right. So here's the thing. If I'm going to put Spencer back in there, it's going to be in a situation where I'm going to ride with him until the wheels come off. Because I don't want, just like in this first game, I don't want him to be looking over his shoulder waiting to get benched. And that's going to happen if you put him in there against the Commanders and they torch him. And he got sacked 14 times in those 3 games that he started. 14. That's
How come
crazy.
no one's talking about Alvin taking over at QB?
I was surprised. I was disappointed they didn't throw any wildcat snaps into that game. I thought maybe they would.
I thought too. Who knows, right? Because we're trying to, obviously spread those Taysom snaps around. And I would have liked to see him do, like, instead of QB power, Alvin power.
Yeah. And so we'll see. I don't know. Like when Jake got in there against the Chargers, I just felt like that was the first time in the 3 weeks that Derek was out that the Saints offense really looked like the Saints offense. And maybe that was, the Chargers were, they were doing things a little differently. They weren't as prepared for Jake, and he was able to get some stuff done. But you move the ball, you scored, you got a field goal. Outside, if you look at the run that Spencer had outside of that second quarter against the Bucs, it was bleak. Those numbers were bleak. And part of that was on the offensive line. Part of that was on the quarterback. So I don't know. Like, again, you didn't have to keep Jake around. You chose to keep Jake around. And if you didn't keep him around because you thought maybe he could be a guy for you, then why is he here in the first place? And I think starting, not giving him an opportunity would be saying, like, well, you might as well just go somewhere else because you don't have you're never going to have any chance here.
The Saints might be seeing this now too, and next year going, maybe we should have a veteran QB also on the roster.
Hey, maybe they'll go sign Daniel Jones. No, don't do that. Please don't do that. Do anything but that. Anything, literally anything would be better than that. I would rather watch Spencer Rattler start the rest of my life than see the Saints go get Daniel Jones.
Danny Jones, baby. Oh, Matt, you're going to get your wish now somehow. Watch.
But I mean, the question's going to become, like going into this game, I said, hey, it's not a guarantee. It's not a given that Derek Carr's on this roster next year. Right. And for me to feel like it is, I would need to come out of that Giants game feeling like Derek Carr is the better option for me than a Drew Lock. You could look under a rock and find 5 Drew Locks just hanging out. Like, he makes $5 million a year. Like, one of the issues the Saints are going to have is to move on from Derek Carr. You're going to need a ton of dead money. It's going to make it really difficult to field a roster, but it's a lot easier to field a roster if you're just like going to be like, hey, we're going to go with the $5 million a year quarterback anyway. So did you come out of that game feeling like, oh, well, if the Saints had Drew Lock instead of Derek Carr, they would have still been in the same situation?
I hear you right.
And you're not going to have these 4 games now to be like, no, this is why you should stick with me. All I've seen over 2 years is a solid quarterback, not a great quarterback, not a bad quarterback, a solid quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over. He's a high-level game manager, but a guy that's constantly getting hurt. And that was kind of the one feather in Derek Carr's cap when he came in here. It was like, he's a tough guy. He's not going to be someone that you're constantly trying to replace, and he has been. He's been constantly finishing games with other guys on the field. And it's going to be, he's going to end up playing in 9 games this year. Like, so what does that do for you? It's tough.
No, that's going to be another question. Like you said, it's like, is he back for next season? And then if that's the case, what are you going to do there? Because obviously we still have big questions about the Haener Rattler decision to make there. And I don't think either one's ready to be your starter in any way, obviously.
Sure, but I need to know about both guys.
Yeah.
Because if you do move on from Carr, maybe you go with one of these 2 guys as your starter and the other guy's the backup. Because if you like, and so that's why like I need to see both. I've already seen Spencer. I think it's time to see Jake and make decisions based on that.
Dear Lord, if this is QB 1 and 2 for next year, buckle up.
If Jake goes out there and does some stuff that you're not expecting, and suddenly you're like, well, maybe we have a starting quarterback here. Like, again, we've already seen that opportunity happen for Spencer. And we know what it looked like. And yeah, maybe he comes in his second opportunity and looks better than he did in his first opportunity. But that second opportunity is going to come. It's not like he's never going to get it. It's not like if you don't start him this week, he's never going to get that chance. And if that's the case, if he never does get that chance, it's because Jake played so well that he never gave the ball back, which would be a win either way. You would still be like, well, good, right? So I get that's where I land on it, and we've kind of gone, or we're circling the wagons here. We've done the same, we're talking in circles. But
you know who's a free agent? Jameis Winston.
No way. Can't imagine why. No, I mean, here's the thing: if you're going to spend $150 million on a also ran quarterback, you might as well do it with Derek.
Oh, that'd be. You're right, because who knows what Winston's going to get on the open market now?
I don't think he's going to get a lot, but he's not getting it here either way. I don't know. Like the question becomes like, okay, a Sam Darnold,
right?
Do the Falcons move on from Kirk Cousins? God, that's a question. So let's see. Big Mill says, would you rather have Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins?
Man, that is tough.
I don't want Kirk. I probably don't want either at the end of the day. Like, I want a young quarterback who's developing, but if I had to pick between those guys,
I would have probably leaned towards Cousins before this stretch that he's had right now. I think it's 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions the last 4 games.
Yeah.
Not pretty.
Yeah, that I think, and to me, that's the difference is like Kirk. I think his ceiling might be a little higher, but also like his volatility is a lot higher. And with Derek, you get I think you get his ceiling and his baseline are a lot closer together. Whereas like Kirk's ceiling is like up here, but his baseline is like down here.
One of the big things I'm seeing about,
but when you get bad Kirk down here, it costs you games. Whereas like Derek Carr's worst game is like somewhere around this range.
I keep seeing a lot of negative talk about, check down Carr. And it's like, do you understand the man has no time?
Or receivers. Are you suggesting that he should be forcing the ball into Kevin Austin? Like sometimes, and it's like your best player is the running back. Yeah, check it down to that guy.
Right. And then he has 8 interceptions in the last 4 games. Exactly.
I think they have. Yeah, I think Kirk has the same number of interceptions on the season or in the last 4 games as Derek has all season. Granted, he hasn't played in all the games. But someone says, question: how much better was Carr than Andy Dalton? Really, he's better than Andy Dalton. How much? It's tough to say. Like, would you have been better off sticking with Andy Dalton and kind of resetting the cap? Probably.
Because Andy Dalton's not dropping those dimes into Scantling for sure.
No, but yeah, I mean, I think Derek has been good enough to keep you afloat.
Yeah,
I think Andy is the guy that leads you into the tank, and that's the difference. And if you're of the belief that the Saints should have jumped fully into that tank, then Andy would have been your guy, and we would be coming out of 2024 saying, "Okay, we're ready." Like we've reset the cap. We've got a bunch of top draft picks that we've been able to work through and develop, and we're going to get another one probably.
I'm thinking now, Jeff, like next year might be like the official reset that the Saints might think about it then. But yeah, they weren't going into this year ready to hit the reset button. They might be ready to now.
It's tough. Like I find it hard to believe that they're going to actively tear down anything. I think it's going to be another year of, okay, we're not taking on any unwieldy contracts, just like this year. Like, okay, we'll sign Justin Simmons, but at our number, not at his. And if he goes somewhere else, he goes somewhere else. But you're not going to try to lose. you're going to try to field the most competitive roster you can, because the players in the room deserve that. Like, you're asking these guys to go out there with motivation. If they feel like they're getting undermined by the personnel department, like, what's your motivation? And that's the thing. Like, when you how far off the Giants are from being a competent franchise? Like, they're not a quarterback away, guys. Like, you've trained that entire roster to do nothing but lose, and how to do nothing but lose. Like, even Dan Campbell, you see how it took, how that first year under Dan Campbell, they went 3-13-1 or something like that. Like they weren't ready to win. It took, and then they started their next year 1-6, until they finally figured out how to win games and how to be confident, and that, you can train a team to lose really easily, and that's a dangerous road to tread.
I'm just worried about next year, just because of your aging stars and the issues of not having playmakers.
Yeah, and you don't know what it's gonna look like when Chris comes back. He's gonna play again, but it's just a question of what it looks like when he does. So is he a star receiver? Is he a 2? Do you need to go out and get yourself a more traditional 1? It's tough to say, but that's kind of where I am. MB pointed out that Marshawn Lattimore's first game for the Commanders will probably be against the Saints.
Definitely.
Did he play? They were on a bye this week, so
right.
We don't know what he would have done. But
we know he did practice last week, which was an upgrade for him. So, yeah, he'll definitely be on track to come to New Orleans.
It would be fitting. If he can get on the field, he'll get on the field. And I don't know if Marshawn really has a legitimate axe to grind against the Saints. Maybe he would have had one against Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen's not here anymore.
Right. I can understand him and Kendre Miller might have a little beef with DA, but I don't think it, like you said, it's with the guys on the field on the team. But he would love to stick it to DA.
I think in a lot of cases you'd be mad because you got traded, but hey, you got traded to a team that has a really good outlook.
Right.
So from your perspective, why would you be mad about that? You weren't playing anyway. You've been hurt. The fact that you were able to go to a playoff team and maybe have a chance to accomplish something. So maybe you'll be mad. Maybe that's something Marshawn, maybe a lot of times players will kind of convince themselves that they're angry just to have that extra bit of motivation. Maybe that's something Marshawn will do.
Right.
But we'll see. Either way, I think anytime you face your former team, there's that, even if it's not a true revenge game.
Who knows? Maybe Marshawn has huge beef with Joe Woods. We don't even know about it.
He could. Who knows? Maybe he and Marcus Robertson didn't get along. I don't know. I'm sure he wants to get on the field. Whether he's really pissed off at the organization or the fans, I don't know. I would be surprised.
The Commanders definitely want him on the field. I know fans over there why the hell did we trade for this guy?
I'm sure Commanders fans are starting to get fed up. So they would definitely, it would be in his best interest to get on the field and show why they made that trade. Right. So a couple more. Let's hit one more. And Justin Pasquale says, I bet Kendre scoring that TD was basically a big middle finger to DA. I don't know. I do wonder, do you think DA's watching the games? Do you think he's sitting down with a burger and a beer watching these games?
Yeah, it's definitely been awfully quiet. I mean, that's not like anybody's following ex-head coaches around, but that's a good question. Is it Sunday and he's let me put on the TV and watch the Saints play?
If I'm DA, I'm in Cabo or something.
Exactly. I'm far away from it for sure.
So hey, I don't know. No, it was definitely cool to see Kendre get that touchdown, and he's, it's been tough for him, right? But you see the player, that's why people oh, cut him. What would benefit you from cutting the guy? You got to hope that he gets his act together and gets on the field and gets healthy, because Riz said it. You see him out there, it's that's a talented running back. That's a good player. You look at some of the missed draft picks the Saints have had. I don't look at Kendre and say they just misevaluated the guy. I think when you see him run and you see him make plays, he's the guy they drafted. He's not out there enough. So,
no, just hopefully he's getting massages after games to take care of those hamstrings. I don't know.
Get him. The Saints definitely have a masseuse on staff, so
they need them.
Anyway, all right, let's wrap this podcast up. I got to go, do something with Derek and get something on our website before people start calling me angrily. But
yes,
thanks everyone for hanging out. Thanks everyone who dropped a question, comment. Apologize, I didn't get to as many as probably hoped, but it ended up being all about Derek Carr, Jake Haener. So we'll figure it out. We'll see how the schedule looks the rest of the week. Maybe do a midweek pod, or do something shorter, not a full podcast. Maybe some like Darren Rizzi is going to talk on WWL. Maybe part that out and bring it to you on Wednesday, as opposed to kind of like an injury report podcast, which I just don't feel like have been getting have been landing the way that I probably want them to. But until then, Saints still alive. One more week until
week 15. Team Haener, baby.
The Hain train.
The Hain train.
Hain train. Or the Rattler snake. You got a sound effect either way. Both have an emoji, and there's equal. You can make we could probably do a survey on Twitter. You respond with a train or a snake, and that's how we will make our starting quarterback decision. You think Riz will be on board for that?
Sure. Yeah, I think if you mention that to him, he'd be like, you know what? That's probably the most logical result right there.
Yeah, let's crowdsource this decision. I mean, I don't see any downside. And we'll go from there.
Man, can't wait for that matchup against Aiden O'Connell that he's down, and Spencer Ritter against the Raiders after this week.
Desmond Ritter.
Oh no, we got the Packers after that. Never mind.
Yeah, but they will probably get Desmond Ritter for the Raiders. Yeah.
That's going to be
you'll get Desmond football. Rattler and Spencer Ritter. See what I did there? Yeah. All right. Who dat? Go Saints. Thanks for hanging out, y'all. Be easy.
Who dat?